Good afternoon. Welcome back to Passion World Talk Radio Network. We are a wholly owned subsidiary of Global Media Network, LLC. Educate, enlighten, entertain, and let's not forget mindfulness. And on today, lest we forget historical, we are going to talk about the U.S. presidents and the constitutional violations that they did in order to advance their own agendas. The present administration is not the only administration that has used or abused the Constitution to get what it wants and when it wants it. There have been past presidents who have also done the same thing. Let's take a look and decide whether or not this is good or this is bad. The first U.S. president is James Buckman's inaction. And this took place, and he is often criticized for his hesitance during a turbulent period of U.S. history. A tension over slavery heightened the national divide between North and South. Buchanan's reluctance to challenge its expansion movement and the failure to address the growing secessionist movement left the nation vulnerable to a breakup. His adherence to the doctrine of states' rights, rather than utilizing executive power to counteract the rising threat to the Constitution, contributed to the unfolding crisis that led to the Civil War. The passive stance is viewed as a failure to uphold the Constitution's principles, proving detrimental to the nation's unity. He just didn't do anything. He thought if he closed his eyes, it would go away. Guess what? It didn't, folks. We had the Civil War, and things haven't been the same since Reconstruction. Yes? Andrew Jackson's Reconstruction reforms rejected. Andrew Johnson, who assumed the presidency after Lincoln was assassinated, resisted essential Reconstruction reforms designed to reshape the post-Civil War. Johnson's commitment to state rights often clashed with the radical republics' intent on protecting the freedom of emancipated African Americans. He opposed the 14th Amendment, and which aimed to grant citizenship and equal protection under the law to all people born or naturalized in the United States. Does that remind you of somebody who took away the privilege and right of born citizenship if you're born in this country? But if you're not the right person who's being born in this country, you don't have natural citizenship. Johnson utilized his presidential powers to veto the Reconstruction legislation, which he viewed as overstepping federal boundaries. His actions reflected skepticism toward federal intervention in state affairs, but appeared to contradict the Constitution's promise of liberty and justice for all citizens. This resistance hampered the progress intended by the post-war amendments and set back efforts to fully integrate and protect former slaves as equal citizens. Johnson's presidency exemplifies the challenges in balancing state sovereignty with national responsibility to protect civil rights. Is that the opposite of what the current administration is now doing by overriding state rights in regards to water and immigration in this country? Franklin Pierce and the Kansas-Nebraska Act. Franklin Pierce's support of the Kansas-Nebraska Act significantly affected the pre-Civil War landscape. The legislation nullified the Missouri Compromise by granting territories the power to determine the legality of slavery within their borders through popular sovereignty. Pierce's endorsement exacerbated social tensions and provoked a widespread controversy. The Kansas-Nebraska Act challenged principles established by the Missouri Compromise, which sought to maintain a balance between free and slave states. Pierce's stance, prioritizing states' rights and self determination, raised questions about the federal government's role in limiting the spread of slavery in new territories. This move undermined the Constitution's attempt to find a middle ground, heightening regional animosities and paving the way for conflicts like leading Kansas. Pierce's presidency is marked by a significant erosion of national unity as his policy underscore the difficulties in reconciling different regional interests within the constitutional framework. Next is Milford Fillmore's Compromise of 1850. Millard Fillmore played a pivotal role in enacting the Compromise of 1850, which aims to quell growing division between the North and the South over slavery. The Fugitive Slave Act, a contentious element of this compromise, mandated that escaped slaves be returned to their owners, even if they had reached free states. And I guess that would also mean that they be brought back from Canada or any place else for that matter. The Fugitive Slave Act challenged notions of liberty and justice held in northern states, raising constitutional questions regarding individual rights and states' autonomy. Critics argued that it infringed upon personal liberties by compelling citizens to act against their moral beliefs, testing the limits of federal power. You could say the same is now true for today. Fillmore's support for this compromise, driven by a desire to preserve the Union, inadvertently intensified sectional tensions by prioritizing short term stability over constitutional principles of liberty and justice. Fillmore's legacy underscores the complexities of governance and a nation divided by deeply entrenched moral and political convictions. Then we have John Taylor's disregard for party policy, almost similar to today's current administration, except he pretty much owns the Republican Party. John Taylor's presidency highlights a constitutional tension between the excessive branch's duty to govern and its obligation to uphold party ideology. And despite his affiliation with the Whig Party, Taylor diverged significantly from its platform, vetoing numerous bills backed by the Whig dominated Congress. He justified his actions by emphasizing his constitutional interpretations, which occasionally clashed with Whig policies, which is what we're going through today. This defiance, led by Taylor's expulsion from the Whig Party, rendered him a president without a party, a very rare type of situation. His presidency raises questions about the extent to which a president should adhere to party lines versus exercising personal judgment for perceived national welfare. His independent stance was seen as both a challenge to the party unity and a demonstration of executive autonomy. Autonomy, commenting on the balance between adhering to party mandates and acting in the nation's best interest. Then the next president was Warren G. Harding and administrative scandals. Mr. Harding's presidency is often overshadowed by administrative scandals, most notably the infamous Teapot Dome scandal. The misuse of government authority for personal gain highlighted vulnerabilities within the executive branch, underscoring the necessity for robust oversight mechanisms to prevent the abuse of power. Boy, does that sound familiar? Hmm. From a constitutional perspective, Harding's administration demonstrates the importance of maintaining vigilance against corruption within government ranks. The scandal underscored the critical function of congressional oversight and independent judicial inquiry in upholding the principles of transparency and accountability laid out by the Constitution. His presidency remains a reminder that the strength of the American constitutional republic depends on the moral fortitude of those entrusted with its implementation. The scandals during his tenure reaffirmed the necessity for a vigilant check on executive power to safeguard democracy's core principles, which is what a lot of people are making a lot of noise about right now with the present administration. Herbert Hoover's Great Depression in action, the guy who started the FBI. Herbert Hoover's handling of the Great Depression is critiqued for his adherence to conservative principles of limited government intervention. His reluctance to provide direct relief to suffering citizens rose from a belief that government aid would undermine individual initiative and self-reliance. Is that similar to Marie Antoinette's "let them eat cake" to the poor people of France? Instead, Hoover advocated for voluntary partnerships between government and business, relying on the private sector to lead recovery efforts. From a constitutional perspective, his policy sparked debate about the federal government's responsibility to act in times of national crisis. Critics argue that Hoover's inaction contradicted the spirit of the Constitution by failing to adequately address the public's urgent needs, thus exacerbating economic disparity and social unrest. I guess you could link that to the fires in California and the subsequent mudslides that will happen when all that rain comes falling down. Hoover's tenure illustrates the importance of adaptable leadership in interpreting constitutional responsibilities in light of contemporary challenges. His legacy underscores the need for proactive measures to uphold the welfare provisions enshrined in the Constitution, serving as a critical lesson in the necessity of dynamic governance. I bet that's almost like rescinding and issuing the order for the U.S. aid to the other countries of the world and helping people to become successful. What do you think? Sounds awfully close, doesn't it? These presidencies, which I've just discussed, demonstrate how crucial it is for leaders to align their actions with constitutional values. While there are many different types of challenges that are facing us now, the core responsibility remains to uphold and protect the foundational ideas that define this great republic. Great republic. That is how the Roman Empire started, as a great republic. And look what happened to them. Something for you to consider when you run out of your own ideas to reflect on the current state of the U.S. Constitution and the present administration. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Lest we forget historical U.S. presidents and Constitution violations. You can hear or view this episode all over again by going to passionatworldtalkradio.com Go all the way down to the bottom of the page where it says State of Current Affairs. Click on it. It will take you to a page where there's a Google link. Click on the link and it will take you directly into YouTube. Or you can go over to Spreaker.com/PWTR and it'll take you into the audio section. These fine programs, Chatting with Betsy, who does interviews with international acclaimed authors, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, Dan Riley's sports commentary, Scam Damnation with Lillian Cauldwell, and an upcoming program called The Wisdom of Women. And it's targeted towards women who are still in the workforce or contributing to their community long after everybody else has retired or shrugged and say it's time for me time. And these women have continued to be successful and to encourage change and to make sure that the changes that have been done are not lost or removed. So come and join us. The program begins March/April. It's an interactive podcast where you're given a number and a pin to go into the conference room, add to the general discussion, the interview on the spot. Ladies, it is your time to shine. Show the guys what they're missing. And also the obstacles of podcasting with host Lillian Cauldwell, who has more than 19 years of podcasting experience. The course lasts 8 weeks, 45 minutes, half-time instruction, the other half-time creating and learning how to speak, communicate, and put together a podcast. So by the end of the course, you're given the opportunity to appear 3 times on PWTRN's network and speak to our audience of over 10 million listeners and viewers. And also by Ruby.ai, go over to http:// AI-with-Lillian.com. It'll take you over to myflex.ai. Take a look what it has to offer. It has everything in it. It's in there, and it's a no-brainer. Do you know they're now offering verification for people to show that they are now verified in teaching AI? And did you also know they're making it a requirement now in the high schools that you need to be AI proficient before you graduate? Don't wait for the ceiling to collapse. It's a no-brainer. Go over to http:// AI-with-Lillian.com and sign up today for a monthly investment that will take you beyond this future and all the other futures waiting to be conquered. Thank you very much for listening. We hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.